All right, so good afternoon, AP Gov. It's a little after 2 o'clock here on Friday, April 3rd. A few things before we get into the Chapter 16 FRQ. Um, a lot of information coming out in the past hour or so about remote learning, about the test itself. I'll try to do my best to kind of answer some of those questions as we go through, but I can tell you right now, I don't have all those answers, nor can I expect us to have the answers today. I know that there's a lot of meetings going on, even as we speak, with leadership in the district, with the governor's office, and then obviously looking into next week with department meetings and department chairs. And just before we get started, yeah, Nate, looking at a note page or study for the test, when I have a little bit more information about what the test itself, then we can kind of create something for that. First off, at the top, just looking ahead into next week, I'm going to continue with my 1 week at a time. It looks like Monday, April 6th is meant to be no student work and teacher planning. So I'm going to tell you right now at the top here that there is to be no work being done here over the weekend, nor on Monday. You need to take some time. But we can address all of that here in a second. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to share my screen with you, and we can take a look at this prompt itself. Okay, so you should be able to see my notes here. If you have questions as we go through this, please throw those into the chat box and I'll do my best to address them as we go. So the original intent of this chapter 16 was to put a mark in that we have finished all of the Waples books. So yay us. We're actually a little ahead of schedule, to be quite honest with you. Remember, we had said April 15th was kind of our deadline there to finish up new content to prep for the May 4th exam. The good news is we are going to have plenty of time to review as we move forward. So looking at my chat box over here, looking here at our FRQ, the original intent was this to be your Chapter 16 interim, and this would have been an FRQ number 2, which is the quantitative analysis. So using a graph or a chart in order to make a prediction. So this is talking about the percentage of US adults who receive or who get their news often on each platform. So whoever keeps doodling, no worries. We can see here that we have television, news websites, radio, social media, and print newspapers as being listed here on the graph, and it goes from 2016 to 2018. So part A says identify the least common outlet from which American adults get their news often in 2018. So this is your point on can you read a graph? So it says identify the least common outlet. So by my estimations, if I look at 2018 and we see that 16% of US adults get their news often from print newspapers, the 1 point answer for letter A is print newspapers is the least common outlet for American adults to get their news in 2018. Part B, describe one trend from the years 2016 to 2018 as shown in the graph. So again, 1 point, can you read? You're looking at describing a trend. So you want to look at change over time. So what I've been able to identify is a few different trends from 2016 to 2018. So I could say, TV, TV viewership, or the percentage of adults who get their news from television from 2016 to 2018 decreased 8%. So that would be a point. Or you could say news websites increased 5%. So not only are you identifying the news source, you're identifying the trend. Does it go up or does it go down? Does it increase or decrease, and by what percentage? I feel that's more than adequate to receive a point. You could also say social media increased 2%. And I don't know about you, but I was the most surprised by that number. I thought it would have been a lot more than that. Or you could have said print news decreased by 4%. So if I were you, and I think the most glaring observations would be that decrease in print news, that decrease in television, that would be one trend as shown on the graph, more than enough information to gain 1 point. Part C, draw a conclusion about the trend you identified in Part B, or how the trend you identified in Part B could impact the electoral system. So now this goes back to some of your readings and some of the things that we discussed yesterday inside those notes. So I jotted a few ideas down here. Sorry, letting people in. The conclusion that you could have drawn in Part C is internet news sources are not as vetted as TV or print news. So you could talk about the fairness of, television or radio or anything that's over the air controlled by the FCC. They definitely, when we say vetted, that means that the information has to be proven. The sources you have to have your sources. You can't just say whatever you want. Whereas like on the internet, there's not as much fact checking that can go on to a Twitter post or something on Instagram, or even, if you're running a blog, internet sources are not as vetted. They're not as thorough as some television and print media sources. So that could be one conclusion, that misinformation is easier to get out through the internet. You could also talk about information is biased or skewed towards one end of the spectrum. So you could talk about, conservative news blogs. You could talk about cable news. Those are, those kinds of things. Information can be biased, and there's a difference between news and infotainment. Infotainment, being some of those talking heads where there's not as much, it's their opinion. It's not necessarily news as it plays out. Another thing, what could impact the electoral system if you start to get more and more partisan voting or more and more partisan reporting on the media, that might lead to a higher percentage of straight ticket voters. It could talk about increased polarization of, electors. So you might have people that are less likely to work across the aisle with one group or another. And I put in there this idea of an echo chamber. So again, you're looking at, you're constantly hearing the same information over and over and over again. You're not necessarily challenging your perspective or your viewpoint. Part D, explain, add a link in there. That's funny. Explain how increasingly diverse media choices can lead to stronger party polarization. So I think what you're looking at for this is you're looking at those terms of selective exposure or narrow casting. So again, those terms that we talked about yesterday, where you're only hearing one perspective, you're only hearing one viewpoint, you're only hearing one side of an argument, you're not hearing maybe a neutral argument, you're not hearing both sides, a point and a counterpoint. So party polarization, that goes back to the previous two chapters where we talk about this widening gap between the left and the right, the widening gap between conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats. There's not as many folks, or folks in the middle have a harder time getting elected. The diverse media choices, instead of just being ABC, CBS, NBC, the fact that you have all the cable news, you have all of these internet news sources, you have podcasts, you have, social media posts, that because there's so many diverse choices in your media and the way that you get information, it could lead to stronger polarization, because again, this echo chamber, you're only hearing the same opinions, narrow casting, that you've edited your news feed so you're only hearing the people that already agree with you, there's nothing that really challenges you to push yourself to the other side, or at least acknowledge that the other side of the spectrum has arguments and has information as well. So what I really like about this FRQ as a whole, it's pretty straightforward. Chapter 16 FRQ, it was meant to be an FRQ number 2, which is quantitative analysis. Least common outlet, print newspapers. One trend, you got to pick an increase or a decrease of a particular kind, draw a conclusion about that, and then again, why would these party polarization, how could diverse choices lead to more polarization? For part C, could you talk about how social media can impact the electoral system, because there's a higher chance for fraudulent accounts on social media to skew voters one way or another? Yeah, totally. I think the idea of social media is really what they're looking for in diverse media. Somebody to talk about in 2016 when they look at Facebook accounts, when they look at Twitter, Twitter accounts that are either bots or found to be being run by click farms and the fraudulent accounts. Absolutely. Do I think that there is a linear connection between fraudulent accounts and voter turnout or voter choice? I think that's a factor in it. I don't think that that's necessarily the specific, like, all because there's a bunch of fake bot accounts from Russia, does that mean this is that? I don't think it's necessarily as direct. But if you are only hearing from one perspective, and so many of those accounts are on that particular side or the other, I think that can then lead to it. I think it's a compounded argument. Rachel, do the trends need to be explained with the numbers, or could a trend just be that TV news was the highest? I think in this instance, the trend says increase or decrease, or that, I don't think, do you have to have the 5% in there? No, but I would definitely need to say that, television was the highest. Yeah. I think that alone, that statement alone, that the TV news was the highest form from 2016 to 2018, that's just a statement. That's not, I think that goes back to the prompt. That doesn't describe a trend. If you were to say something that, television news, though some of the other ones have increased, television news has decreased, I think there needs to be like another prepositional phrase beyond just that thing there. I hope that answers your question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just stop sharing my screen right now. So again, let's try to keep my thoughts together. Are there any questions, concerns on the Chapter 16 FRQ as it stands right now? Okay. If there are, throw them in the chat or shoot me an email later. Let's talk about a few things just moving forward. Okay. And number one, I don't have all the answers here right now. So I am working on a document that I will share out with you on Monday that has all the information about the AP test itself. So if you wanted to put something on your calendar right now, I think the most important information that you need to know about the AP test right now is that it will happen for everyone in the country. We'll take the AP Gov test on Monday, May 11th. Okay, so that is the test day. The time, let me just review. The time in and of itself will be 2 o'clock our time. So even if you're in, if you're somewhere else, it's going to be at whatever time that is. For you guys, it's 2 o'clock our time. That's the most important information. The rest of it, I have a document I'm building. I'm working with Mr. Vanderveer, just kind of like what the questions may or may not look like, what the grading, what the scoring breakdown is. I think that's a lot of information for a Friday and not important today. I will share that out as part of our plan on Monday, but the most important information is Monday, May 11th, 2 o'clock our time is the time that you will take the 45-minute AP government exam. Okay, so let's move forward. Like I said, when this all started, I'm going to plan it 1 week at a time, and I'm going to continue to do that. Some of the communication may or may not have come out that Mondays are going to kind of be our planning days. Regardless, it's going to be very similar to what we've already been doing. Um, I've discovered a fun feature that you can schedule announcements. So I'm not going to be doing them in live time. I will post announcements, the schedule for the week on Monday, and then each day I will post one announcement. I try to keep your emails small, to like what we will be working on. My tentative plan for the remainder of this our time is looking at units 1, 2, and 3 and reviewing the content from those. So federalism, the Constitution, branches of government, civil rights, civil liberties. That is the content that will be on the test. So we will break those down a little bit each week. So probably unit 1, it will be our focus next week. Unit 2 is so huge, I'll probably break that guy into 2 weeks, unit 3 for a week, and that'll take us right up until the test. My plan is to give you information as far as the weekly schedule on Monday. On Tuesday, kind of doing a group check in, maybe like posting the video of, let's go through the unit content. Friday, giving you some sort of practice assignment for that week, and then reviewing that on Friday. I know a lot of you and a lot of your parents have said things like, hey, I got 5 Zooms going on at the same time. I can't possibly do everything all at the. I get it. That's why I've been trying to do a good job about downloading these and posting them to YouTube. But my thinking would be, um, on Wednesdays and Thursdays, our typical block days, is setting up period specific just check-in times for you guys during your regularly scheduled block period time, that I will have all those links, all that information out to you on Monday. So that kind of gives you a chance that rather than being in such a big group one time, that you're going to have your regularly scheduled time on Wednesday or Thursday. Again, that's just kind of a preliminary plan for us to kind of address the fact that you could have 7 or 8 meetings going on at the same time. As far as grading, as far as finals, as far as all of that, I do not have answers. I will probably not have answers to that until sometime next week or early the week after. You have to allow time for the principals and all of them to meet, and then they meet, and then the department chairs meet, and then the departments meet. So it takes time for this all to funnel down. I am not the only one making decisions here, so I will give you all that information as soon as possible. So to recap, we have finished the book. There is to be no work on AP Gov the rest of the day, tomorrow, Sunday, or Monday, unless you haven't finished one piece or another. Then kind of go back and take that time. I've gotten emails from people saying, can I redo the FRQs? Yes. As I score them, if you want to go back and give it another attempt, I saw a few of you have already done it, take it as many times as you'd like. The guided readings, those are open as many times. You can take them as many times as you want. It will continue to post the higher score. So take the time to do those. If you have questions, if you get locked out of things, let me know. But then starting next week, I'll probably start looking back through I think we did a pretty good job about people missing things. I don't think we have too many of those pre-spring break missing assignments, but we can work through that. So I know it was a lot of information. I know, you're as disappointed, probably more so than I am, that this kind of looks like to be the new normal for the foreseeable future. But my promise is to work with you as much as I can to prepare you, and hopefully that you'll be as successful as you can on the AP test scheduled for May 11th. Are there any questions from anyone on any topic, anything that I could be doing? Kaylee, when will FRQs go into the grade book? When I have more clarity on what those expectations are, I should probably have a better idea. after Tuesday morning at the very soonest. I definitely need to talk with some other people as well, but I will let you know. My understanding is that anything that we've worked on remotely in the scheme of all of this cannot hurt your grade. And I can only control AP.Gov, but I promise you that it cannot hurt your grade. It can only help you. Can we see our grades on the FRQs? Absolutely. Yeah, they should be posted there. I haven't scored 15 or 16 yet, but the 14 argumentative essay, I've scored every one that I've gotten so far. And the 15, I just marked that if it was turned in or not. I kind of work through them as I go. Being on the computer all day, as you guys know, you got to take those breaks. Any other questions that we might have? In your opinion, we be able to get another? In my opinion, probably. I mean, there's probably going to be something. How that's structured, I know that there has been a push for people to be able to do interims and summatives and all sorts of things like that. I just know that it's not just us, it's not just Legend, it's all the schools in the district. So there will be opportunities to bring grades up for sure, one way or another. Any other questions? I like the fact that this kind of seems to be the consistent groupings that I'm seeing. I'm seeing those same folks. I see Rachel, I see Emma up there, Sue Ball's hanging out. Rebecca's in a new spot today. She moved downstairs. And the rest of you who are shy on cam, I don't blame you either, but they kind of told me I have to be on cam. So yeah, guys, so I will post this to YouTube. I'll shoot out an announcement just for the folks that weren't able to be here, so they can see that. If you want to go back, revise, submit, go through that chapter 16 FRQ, please be my guest, get that turned in. Otherwise, if you have finished the guided reading questions, if you have finished those FRQs, you're good. You're good. From here on out, we're going to start looking at reviewing, going back to the beginning of the year, foundational documents, units 1, 2, and 3. And on Monday, I'll have a document for you and we'll go through just kind of outlining the expectations for this revised version of the AP exam. We good? Cool. All right, guys. Well, have a great weekend. The sun is shining. Get out there, enjoy the nice weather. I'll leave you with this. I heard an interview this morning with a member of Congress, and the woman said, recreate and recreate are the same word, and that it's important to have recreation, important to go outside. It's important to do things that fill you up and build you up and allows your body to be ready to create. And I thought that was something really important. Just again, this work balance, and you shouldn't be on the computer all day. I certainly hope you're not. And if you are, and especially for my class, take a break. Get to it next week. We'll cover this all at that point. So, all right, guys, I hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, and I'll check back with you on Monday.